Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew, man? We're back today, man. We got the boy Nick Crowley. Woo! Nick slid right in on us, man. I didn't even see this coming. We got the internet darkest corners 6 for y'all today. Yeah. I'm just.
You said what?
I don't know. Mm-hmm. But hey, with that being said, before we get into it, make sure you check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go if you want to further support. All you got to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's visuals,
like it in with a thumbs up.
But hey, man, let's hop into it, y'all. Let's check it out. Let's see what it's about. You know what I'm saying? Oh, man, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hey, also, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
Please
Man.
do.
Join the family, join the fun. Let's go.
Fifth alarm. Working structure fire. 7741 Liberty Road Drive.
It's 9 a.m. on May 18th, 2024. Residents of Charlotte, North Carolina wake up to the smell and sight of black smoke billowing up into the sky. The source? A massive 7-story apartment complex, home to 239 luxury units.
Did he say 2024?
Yeah, May 2024.
So last year.
Mm-hmm.
Why haven't...
Or at least what should have been luxury units. At the time, the structure was still under construction, meaning that thankfully no residents were living there. But this in and of itself presented 2 major problems. The first was that, in its current state, the top 5 floors were primarily just the bones of the structure, made almost entirely of wooden insulation, making the building as a whole extremely flammable. Meaning that, although the fire had started out relatively small, it was quickly going to consume the entire complex if it wasn't put out quickly. Which brings us to the second and even more glaring problem. The building was actively under construction when the fire started, and that morning 17 construction workers had clocked in, all of whom were now in grave danger. And by the time the firefighters arrived on the scene, the situation was already dire. And so firefighters rushed in, finding a large group of the employees and leading them out to safety. Though when they made it outside, they made the horrifying realization that they had only found 15 of them.
Oh no.
Somewhere within that labyrinth of burning wooden walls, 2 men were left behind, trapped and calling out to anyone who might hear them.
Damn.
And these pleas weren't just being made to those on the scene, as in the following minutes, one of the trapped men, 30-year-old DeMonte Sherrill, would take out his phone, open up Facebook, and go live, revealing the horrifying reality that both he and his friend had found themselves in.
Somebody send help, we're in South Park.
If you own a computer, here's how to get the most out of it. Watch this, watch this.
Yo, I'm at South Park right now. At work, the building on fire, and I can't get out.
The stream showed DeMonte Sherrill and his friend Reuben Holmes somewhere deep within the prospective apartment complex, and though the fire hadn't yet reached them, the smoke certainly had, blanketing them in a thick impenetrable fog, not only making breathing extremely difficult, but also making it nearly impossible for rescuers to see them.
It's getting harder and harder for them to see us. We're gonna have to stand out here and see. The building on fire, I'm trapped inside, me and my man.
This was likely one of the reasons why DeMonte chose to start this livestream, hopeful that it could show rescuers exactly where they were. But based on the footage, their positioning was far from ideal. They were on the second highest floor, floor 6, which had only one access point, a single stairway that was on the complete opposite side of the building. And based on their testimony in the footage, something had clearly blocked their path to that one remaining exit, meaning that the only other way out would be to jump. Though at 6 stories in the air, and falling into what would likely be the heart of the fire, this would have meant certain death. There was quite literally nowhere for them to go. Rescue was their only hope.
And then with so much commotion, screaming ain't gonna ain't benefit nothing. Because you got people on the ground floor
Talking,
screaming.
yeah.
You got the ambulance trucks and everything. The fire, they're trying to put out the fire with the water hose. That's gonna be loud. Yeah, he did the best thing by going live in a situation like this. But also, who's gonna be available to watch to be able to alert them? You know. Damn, that's sad, bro.
Yo, this building is on fire. I'm at work. Somebody send help. We're at South Park.
Seemingly realizing this, DeMonte began to grow more desperate, yelling out into the void of smoke, while Ruben can be seen in the background waving his phone flashlight, with both men doing anything they could to help rescuers find them. Before...
The fire gonna hit them too, though.
the stream abruptly ends. Rescuers were aware of the unfolding situation on the 6th story. They first tried to reach the men by using a massive crane with a basket attached, which can actually be seen in DeMonte's livestream. Though in it, you can see that it's also facing the complete wrong direction, as the smoke was just that impenetrable. However, at one point, it's believed that the crane operator did actually see these men, but the blaze was just too extreme, leading to the operator himself having to be rescued. This left only one real option for saving DeMonte and Ruben. They were going to have to go in after them. And so they climbed that stairway up to floor 6 and started their trek to the opposite end of the structure. Though before they could even make it halfway, the rescuers were relegated to a slow crawl, as the inferno around them raged more and more intensely, and the smoke grew thicker and thicker. Though that's when they began to hear screaming. Somewhere lost in that maze, Ruben and DeMonte were yelling as loud as they could for help. This sound was a sign that they were getting close. Though just then, rescuers would be met with another sound.
All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure per command. All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure.
Command all companies, this will be defensive at this time. We'll be ready for this side to collapse. Everybody get out of the collapse zone. Confirming you are coming out, but you're not out of the building.
With the order being made for all of them to evacuate, as by this point, the structure was engulfed in flames, and a collapse was imminent. The firefighters tried to call out to the two in one last attempt to guide them towards rescue, but they never came. In fact, at that point, the structure fell eerily silent. They would leave that structure without DeMonte or Ruben, and minutes later, the fire consumed the entire building, with the temperature inside reaching 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, before
it collapsed.
It would eventually topple to the ground. And inside, DeMonte and Ruben would become the sole fatalities of this catastrophe.
Yo, I'm at South Park right now, at work, and the building on fire, and I can't get out. It's getting harder and harder for them to see us.
Knowing how the story ends would make this live stream difficult for anyone to watch. But what I find most upsetting about it is that the majority of those who initially watched this were his own friends and family that followed him on Facebook, with these viewers including his own mother. And a lot of them probably had no idea he even worked this job, as he had just been hired that week. His brother had also caught the stream as it was happening and actually rushed over to the scene where he pleaded with the firefighters to watch the footage. But despite doing the best they could, there was just too much working against them to save DeMonte and Ruben. Following an investigation into the fire, it was discovered that the crew was using an organic foam insulation, which was known to be extremely flammable and produce thick black smoke. And this became deadly when the machine used to spray that insulation caught fire, sending the whole building up in flames, where they had yet to install any sort of smoke detector or alarm system to alert the crew of a fire. Making matters worse, there had been a temporary set of stairs made right where the two men had been trapped, but that stairwell had just been removed in order to make way for the permanent set of stairs. Because of this and a myriad of other issues, the companies involved with this construction were forced to pay a fine of $50,000 and are currently being sued by the families of both victims. But regardless of the outcome, nothing will ever make up for the loss of DeMonte Sherrill and Ruben Holmes.
That's sad, bro. So why haven't I heard of it? Just literally just happened. That's something you would think that would have hit national, you know what I'm saying, news coverage.
You would think.
But we got other bullshit that's just, you know what? Last year was an election year too, so it's getting suppressed by all the bullshit.
Yeah.
Things were getting concerning. Johnny Cashman spoke to his family nearly every single day, but now, on the 6th day without receiving any communication from him, they knew that something was wrong. Johnny lived in Lynchburg, Virginia, hundreds of miles away from his home in Maine, and so, being unable to check on him themselves, they called police in the area and requested a welfare check. Police entered Johnny's apartment on the 19th of April, 2022, and hours later, they would call his parents with the news that they had found their son dead on the floor. According to the officers, Johnny had experienced some sort of medical event that led to GI bleeding that ultimately claimed his life. But this made no sense to Johnny's family. He was only 38 years old and had just been given a clean bill of health after a full medical exam only 4 months prior. It was so out of...
What's GI bleeding? I don't know if you ever heard of it before.
It's because if I say it, then you. It's what I'm going to. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's from anywhere from the digestive tract, from the mouth all the way to the rectum.
All the way to the rectum.
Okay. And him being 38 is not normal. They consider that too young to be experiencing something like that.
Been given a clean bill of health after a full medical exam only 4 months prior. It was so out of the blue, in fact, that they even asked if there were any signs of a struggle, or if there was any evidence that he may have taken his own life, but they were assured that there was no trauma, no drugs, and nothing suspicious found on the scene, and that, as shocking as it was, his cause of death was entirely natural, and had likely just been spurred on by drinking and tobacco use, with the only solace being that Johnny didn't suffer, as they stated that he had died instantly. Because of this, no autopsy was performed, as the case seemed as straightforward as it gets. And despite his family questioning if they should get their own autopsy, they were told by officers that it wouldn't be necessary. And so, Johnny's body was cremated and sent back to Maine, in what seemed to be the end of Johnny Cashman's story.
What? Oh, y'all did everything wrong. Everything wrong. Especially if y'all are suspicious. You get your own autopsy. Well, because I guess the reason why, because a lot of people, like, I think it costs kind of like a pretty penny for a family. But that's the reason why you got, I guess we'll have life insurance policy. We'll be able to pay something towards it. But to here nor there with that, I think they should have had their own autopsy and most definitely not cremate him. Still bury the body. Because you never, especially if you're suspicious of anything, how the body buried. Just in case later on we need to, you know?
Well, that part I'm not going to say like how you should after the fact.
I'm saying if you're suspicious of
I'm saying like a burial or
the only reason why I'm saying so let me say the reason why I'm saying that is because now you have him cremated, there's no body to later on look at.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying.
Do that prior. That's all I'm saying. Do it prior. Go tell nobody how they should bury their loved ones or whatever, or how they should after the fact. But at least like.
I'm saying if you're suspicious of anything,
right?
At least have a body we can look on just in case. Now, if there's no suspicion, yeah, do whatever you desire. But if I'm suspicious, most definitely, I'm like, we ain't finna just, you know what I'm saying, get rid of whatever, you know. That's just how I feel on the suspicious note of it.
Ten days after Johnny's body was discovered, his ex-girlfriend and her mother made their way back to his apartment in order to retrieve some of her belongings. She knew that re-entering the space was going to be difficult, but ultimately there was no way she could have prepared for what was waiting for her inside. There was blood everywhere. It was pooled in the bathrooms, wiped on doors, spread all over the living space, and was even found on a chair and a banister. But the most horrifying part of it all was the walls. They were covered in splattered blood, which revealed long, streaking handprints. It was something straight out of a horror movie, and although Johnny's cause of...
And this has sat like that for 10 days? So they ain't even investigating. They ain't had nobody come.
Ain't no way y'all didn't see that.
Yeah, I know.
So was this done after, when, you know what I'm saying? Because y'all had to go in there to
recover the body.
So this couldn't have.
No, it's a cover-up. That's the reason why you don't.
I agree with you.
No, I'm just saying, like, yeah. Because even the body's gonna show all these wounds.
But that's
then I wonder, did y'all even view the body as
that's
y'all
what
have?
saying. The only thing I was saying is do all of that prior before you bury, before you do it. Just I don't care what they say. Oh well, it doesn't look suspicious. Doesn't seem like foul play. It's just kind of like
I won't waste my time.
I'm going to steal. I want to know, like especially if there's like this person, like anybody. Sickness happens to everyone, right?
True.
No, regardless of the age.
True.
But at the end of the day, I'm going to still make sure that just for myself and my mental that, no, I still want y'all to do an autopsy. I still want y'all to do a thorough,
investigation.
Yes.
To see what.
Just to make sure. Because it may not seem as this, foul play, but.
Because he was in Virginia. His family was in Maine. Sometimes y'all just got to make that trip, bro. If y'all made that trip just to get his belongings, y'all would have saw all this shit and be like, hell no, something ain't right.
Facts.
Handprints. It was something straight out of a horror movie, and although Johnny's cause of death was deemed natural, what they found in that apartment seemed anything but. Traumatized by what they were witnessing, the pair snapped multiple photos of the bloodshed and ran out of the unit, directly into Johnny's neighbor. This neighbor revealed that they believed something far worse than a medical emergency had happened to Johnny, as they had a security camera mounted to their door which faced Johnny's unit, and on the day of his passing, it captured something incredibly disturbing. The footage shows Johnny making his way up the flight of stairs leading to his apartment at around 3:03 p.m.
Okay.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary at all, though it is noteworthy that he was holding an empty glass, perhaps insinuating that he had been drinking. But this doesn't seem to impair his movements much at all, as he punches in the code and enters his home, just as he did every other day. But moments later, something happens inside that unit, and while it goes unseen, it doesn't go unheard.
Okay.
Oh, dude, what the fuck? What are you doing? Yo, what the fuck, dude?
Oh, no. Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. Y'all are so incompetent because I'm like, what? Oh, be for real.
There you go.
Be for real.
There's so much evidence in this fucking, that's fucking insane, bro.
All of that.
Yes.
Okay. What are you doing, man? Stop. Stop.
So how the person actually gets in the, because he's up. He's not on the first floor. I don't know what floor he's on, but he's most definitely not on the first floor, right? So how the hell does someone get access to his apartment without it being caught on camera? Because this looks as though it's the only entry point.
Right.
Unless the patio got one of, like in New York, got the joint where you can shoot off the patio.
Yeah.
And you can go up, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The fire escape.
Yeah.
But most of the time, you don't see other places with fire escapes only in New York and stuff like that. And that's mainly in the movies and stuff. Mm. You don't see that on the regular smuggler. Like, apartment buildings are not built like that anymore. You know? And I guess that's for safety reasons. You know, do the fire escape thing because access to other people's apartment. So how's this person not being captured on either coming or leaving?
Right. I get what you're saying.
The audio seems to depict a man yelling, asking repeatedly, "What are you doing?" and begging for something to stop. On top of this, you can also hear loud thuds and banging. Almost as
You hear two voices though. You hear the "What you doing, man?" and another man, other voice.
if things were falling over inside, or there was some sort of physical altercation, before the unit then goes quiet just a few seconds later. It was unclear if this voice was Johnny's, or perhaps someone else who had been inside the unit, but regardless, one thing was apparent from this audio. There was someone else in that apartment, despite the fact that Johnny lived alone. And just 7 minutes later, this unseen person would emerge.
Okay. There you go.
And then he leaves so casually. Like, bro.
This clearly wasn't Johnny, and after leaving the unit, the anonymous man nearly makes it out of the building before he seems to change his mind. Turning around and walking back up the stairs before fiddling
And his fingerprints is on everything because he has no gloves on.
with the door handle, touching it only with his sleeve, like he was wiping off his fingerprints.
Oh, that's what he's trying to do.
Okay, it's in the rest of the house.
He then walks down the stairs and stops once again, where he seems to be in a state of shock over whatever had just transpired, before he composes himself and walks out of the building. But the footage wasn't quite finished yet.
Okay. 8 minutes. Okay.
Just 1 minute later, you can hear Johnny shouting for help from inside the apartment, to which moments after, he stops, and no further sound or activity would come from Johnny's unit until police arrived 5 days later.
Wow.
The footage and
So y'all go inside and, man, what the fuck?
the scene at the apartment seemed to contradict what Johnny's family had been told about his death. The blood...
Because keep in mind, you got all of this blood all over the house. Clearly, there was a struggle. Things are falling, bumping into, like, there was, like, what? And y'all say, nothing looks suspicious. It seems natural. Ain't no way.
Like, the family had him cremated and just sent to him.
In a situation like this, when I have not seen, and that's why I said I agree with you, but I'm not gonna tell nobody how to whatever. But in a situation like this, I never said you did. But in a situation like this, I gotta do what I gotta do for my family. I am not. You're not about to just tell me, hey, it's this. We're not gonna do an autopsy. No, you're gonna do one, please. Like, he had no health issues. I need for you to do one. Like, that's just crazy.
It's beyond, man. It's insane and just negligence. Like, that's a lawsuit like a motherfucker. I'm suing y'all for not even trying.
Seemed to contradict what Johnny's family had been told about his death. The blood all over made it obvious that Johnny's death had not happened in an instant. And this, coupled by the presence of this unknown man who was clearly distraught and wiping off his fingerprints, as well as the sound of the apparent struggle inside, seemed to point towards something much more sinister than what was initially conveyed to the family. But even with this footage, police still believed that Johnny's death was due to a medical emergency, as they quickly changed their initial story, saying that the blood spread was due to uncontrollable vomiting, and that Johnny had in fact likely suffered, at least for a short while. But this medical emergency wasn't elaborated on, as they didn't truly know what caused it, as no autopsy was ever performed, nor could one ever be performed, as by this point, Johnny was already cremated, and cremated because of the officer's initial statements. So if Johnny had actually been murdered, which the footage does seem to suggest, there was now virtually no way to prove it. And what makes this even more frustrating is that law enforcement already had this footage. It was collected that very day, and they either didn't fully look through it or didn't think that this was overly suspicious.
They didn't care.
Or was this a setup?
Well,
what could Johnny possibly been involved in?
True. True.
Cause
True.
there's cover-ups always going on, and sometimes
But everyone else surely did. And soon, this video began making the rounds online, leading to one glaring question being asked. Who is this man? As no one in Johnny's life recognized him. Well, it wouldn't be until May 11th that investigators would finally ID him as Stephen Church. And upon being questioned, he revealed that he had moved to Lynchburg for work, but the opportunity he had lined up fell through shortly after he arrived, leaving him with no money and without a place to stay, which is when he met Johnny, who offered to let him crash on his couch. He supposedly stayed with Johnny for 3 days, and described Johnny as an alcoholic who drank constantly, including on that fateful day. When Johnny arrived home, Stephen claims that he started drunkenly yelling at him about paying rent, which led to the two getting into a verbal altercation. But
he had just got home, bro.
It seemed like
he might have been I can't tell he was a little intoxicated because the way he swaying when he was coming up the stairs, and even when he was trying to gain access.
Yeah.
But it sounded like immediately there was an altercation, not a gradually built up
conversation, and then
it happened too soon.
Some startled him, it seems like.
But he insisted that this altercation never turned physical, and that he left immediately after, to which he quickly went back to clean his prints because he was afraid that Johnny would try and have him arrested for squatting. And having already racked up 2 felonies in his life, Stephen was paranoid about going back to jail.
What's the previous felony?
But when Stephen was leaving, he did mention seeing Johnny hunched over the toilet as if he were going to vomit, but he claims to have left before this so-called medical emergency started. This is the gist of Stephen's account from that day, but the problem is, it doesn't really match up with what we're hearing in the video.
Not at all.
From the footage, we can hear everything going on in that unit, but at no point do we hear any sort of an argument, nor do we hear anything about rent, with the phrases lending themselves more to a physical struggle rather than a verbal one. In fact, the whole time it appears that we're only hearing one voice. But there is an exception.
I can't stop.
To my knowledge, it's never been conclusively.
If he did say, I can't stop, I also hear Johnny saying, please, please. Do you hear that?
I mean, I hear what's being said, but I don't know who voice is who voice to say which is which.
To my knowledge.
Do you hear that, please? Do you hear that, please, please, please? I'm just asking, did you hear that part?
It's never been conclusively determined whose voice is who in the recording, and either scenario paints a far different picture of what may have happened inside that room.
Well, I'm gonna say this: his family can be able to identify his voice. It's like his family and loved ones can be able to say that one that's saying stop is, you know what I'm saying? Especially when you're dead and gone in a situation like this. Voice recognition, you go ask family members, does this voice sound familiar? They'll be like, especially family and friends, that's Johnny's voice.
And especially, like, say, for instance, like his girlfriend is there, right? That would have been simple to just ask his girlfriend, because the family, you know.
There's two voices we need you to be able to identify Johnny's
which
voice.
one is,
Whose voice is who in the recording, and either scenario paints a far different picture of what may have happened inside that room.
True.
But regardless, this audio makes it clear that Stephen's story was fabricated at least to some degree, as he also fails to account for the loud banging in the background. And because of this, his version of events is generally rejected, with most people seeming to believe one of 2 main theories. The first is that, upon arriving home, Johnny and Stephen had gotten into a physical altercation, resulting in Johnny taking some sort of blow to his abdomen, which in turn triggered or exacerbated this medical emergency. GI bleeds are horrific, and can certainly cause the level of bleeding that was found in the apartment, and perhaps seeing all the blood coming from Johnny, Stephen started yelling.
Which is true, because the one thing what's his name, Stephen? Mm-hmm. One thing that, from what we can see, I don't see any blood on him. Mm-hmm. So if he was stabbing him or anything, wouldn't there be blood? He would have blood residue on him. If that's a lot of blood inside this apartment. There's no way he's walking out without any blood being on him. I don't believe. Unless he changed his clothes, but I don't think he would have had time enough to change.
I mean,
his
according
clothes.
to the video, I can't really see. He did zip up his jacket at one point, but I can't necessarily see.
From what we can see, yeah.
From what we can see, as far as if he did have any type of like specks of blood on him or something like that,
but there's just too much blood all over the place. But like Nick did say, it could have been a blow to the abdomen that caused a rupture, internal rupture or something, and that could have happened.
It could have happened because even though if it was a result of you guys getting into like an altercation and you did something, you just left him there like that, you still are responsible.
Yeah, I'm not.
But
yeah,
we do know that even after you left, we heard him call for help, so we do know he was alive at some point. But shortly after.
But so technically, he died in result of an altercation with you, which is still a homicide.
Yeah.
Like, he wouldn't be in that position if you never put your hands on him.
The level of bleeding that was found in the apartment, and perhaps seeing all the blood coming from Johnny, Steven started yelling at him before deciding to run off, fearing that he would be charged for murder. This would explain Steven's demeanor and actions after leaving the apartment, and why he may have fabricated his story, as he knew or knows that he was directly responsible for Johnny's death. And this blow to the abdomen could have easily been missed by investigators, as the injuries would have been primarily internal. The second theory is that upon arriving home, Johnny naturally experienced a medical emergency leading to this catastrophic GI bleed. Upon seeing this and perhaps being in a state of shock, Steven yelled at him, demanding to know what was happening and telling him to stop, as perhaps he was moving around the apartment and tracking blood everywhere, which would explain the other voice saying, "I can't stop." I could see how this experience would make no sense to Steven, and perhaps just having no idea what was happening, he left and tried to make it look like he was never there, as he was afraid of being blamed for whatever was happening to Johnny, and so he essentially left Johnny there to die.
But that doesn't, with that scenario and that theory, it doesn't cooperate with the rumbling and tussling that we hear.
Yeah, true.
That rumbling and tussling, if anybody has been in an altercation, that's rumbling and tussling of two individuals.
And my thing is, if my friend has let me sleep on his couch for 3 days, whatever, and I see that he's in medical need, I'm going to call
911.
Not just leave him there to perish.
Even if you're going through whatever you're going through, if I call 911 and you're bleeding out all over the place, they justify it as a GI bleed. If I say, hey, he came in, they're doing an investigation, they determine nothing, I'm not going to jail for murder. For me to run away from a situation and come back and try to wipe my DNA, that's me trying to hide something.
And if you would have called for help immediately, he possibly could have. This is 5 days later when the police came to find him.
And so I guess the body never had any puncture wounds or anything, so it wasn't a stabbing or anything.
So that's, yeah. Because if they have seen that, then they would have done an autopsy, but there was nothing physical.
You never know, even with that.
Well, I will hope so.
Whether knowingly or unknowingly. What bothers me about this theory is why 911 was never called, not only by Steven, but by Johnny too, as his phone was found in the unit with blood on it, implying that he had it in his hand at some point, though it's possible that the massive blood loss just made him too disoriented.
True. Could have.
Both of these theories seem believable, or at least more so than the explanation that Steven had given. However, in October of 2022, Johnny's case would officially be closed for good, with Steven being cleared of any wrongdoing, as Johnny's death was labeled the same way that it always has been, a medical emergency that couldn't be further elaborated on, with the most relevant evidence being that Steven's shoe prints were not found in the blood, but Johnny's were, implying that he had not been part of the struggle. But in my mind, this can be explained by both theories mentioned previously. Though regardless, without the possibility of an autopsy, this is likely where this case ends for good.
Yeah.
But with this disturbing footage, I can't help but think that there was more to the story than we may ever know.
More.
True.
Basically, Steven done got away with murder. And with him, I don't know if he had previous... And then just because your family say he hasn't had previous medical conditions doesn't mean he hasn't. He just hasn't related that information to y'all. He might have had a previous health issue. He just didn't tell his family or friends about it, or even his girlfriend. Some people, they just don't. Like, they deal with medical issues. Or he might not have... He probably has been in pain,
but hasn't been able went to the doctor because we don't know if he had medical insurance or anything like that. So he might just been dealing with whatever pain he previously had. Also, he has been drinking. Then get in a fight, hit in the gut. We don't know what rupture. Also with the alcohol and stuff in the stomach. There's the other things that, you know what I'm saying? But I do believe whatever altercation, because there was an altercation that happened between him and Steven, resulted in the death. That's it. To me, that's not first degree murder, but it's manslaughter, at least. At least give him manslaughter. Or was that capital murder? What's the difference between capital and manslaughter? I can't remember. It's not first degree murder. It's not second degree murder. I believe it's manslaughter because it's somebody died in result of an altercation with you.
I don't know, man. Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. I really would like to know who voice was who voice, though. Because I feel like they were also kind of like...
Bro, they were tussling. And he said, man, what the fuck you doing? Nah, man, come on. But also, I hate they didn't do a autopsy.
Yeah.
And I hate that they went ahead and cremated him before they even came and looked into it their damn self.
True.
That y'all didn't go look at the body. Also, because we can't tell if he had any bruising on the body previously before. I mean, after the death. Because if he had been in a fight, he still would have had some bruises on him. So if he had a black eye, he had a knot somewhere or anything, would have been able to determine if we did an autopsy, which was 100% justified, like prove that there was an altercation that happened.
Yeah, true.
Or even bruising in other abdomen.
And my thing is, if it wasn't an altercation, if you're going off of Steven's story, whatever, my thing is, why didn't you, like, help your friend? Why didn't you call 911? Like, forget all the other stuff, whatever you got going on, a previous record, call. Like,
he gave you a place to stay.
He gave you a place to stay.
To lay your head when you had nothing.
But then what also makes me think that, what also makes me think that it was something more than what you're saying it is, because you never came back.
Never came back.
You never came back to the house after that.
Because you already knew what it was.
So, I don't know, man. That's crazy.
How to get away with murder. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And what is his previous felony charges?
Yeah.
So, obviously, he's been in jail before. What is his criminal history? If he has any kind of, like, aggressive criminal history, then there you go. If it's ever been assault. Ever been, like, you know?
It was around 7:30 a.m. on a warm July morning back in 2019. 17-year-olds Bethany Martin and a 16-year-old friend decide to walk to a gas station near their home in San Antonio, Texas. And as the two of them made their way down the road, their path brought them parallel to a drainage ditch, which was often filled with various trash and other discarded material. But on this day, something far more interesting caught their eye. It looked like a man crouching down and leaned up against one of the concrete walls, but the closer they got, the more they realized how unusual his posture was. He looked completely unnatural, and he wasn't moving. And by the time they came face to face with him, the reality of the situation would hit them. They had just found a dead body. This discovery was enough to traumatize anyone, especially two teenagers, and upon calling the police and being sent on their way, Bethany and her friend would make the long walk back home contemplating what to do next, before they eventually landed on the idea of sharing their experience with the world. And so, as soon as they got in the door, they began to set up lights and their camera in order to film a TikTok. The clip showed the two sitting on a couch appearing to be in a state of shock, with the words, "Us remembering we found a dead body this morning," plastered on the screen, offering no other context aside from the description, which simply read, "I wish we were kidding, all respect to the family." Some offered sympathy for the girls, while others viewed their post as insensitive and exploitative, but others weren't even convinced it was real, partially due to this glaring lack of context. But any doubt of this post's legitimacy would be quickly thwarted by a discovery made not even one full day later, as it was revealed that this recording hadn't actually been the only video that these two girls had made on that fateful day. On their walk to the gas station, the girls had stumbled across the body of 25-year-old Marcus Adams, with the young man having seemingly perished earlier that morning, with it being apparent that he had taken his own life. But upon finding Marcus, the girls weren't actually overwhelmed with sadness or even shock, as instead, their focus immediately went to something far different, as something on the man's body had caught their attention. His necklace.
Wow.
The girls really liked it. In fact, the unnamed 16-year-old had said that it matched her fashion perfectly. Wow. And so, before police arrived, the two would once again pull out their phone and start recording, showing Bethany approaching the body with her intention being to grab his necklace, which she eventually does, removing the medallion and giving it to her friend, before tossing the chain into the grass nearby, leading to the girls running away from the scene. The 16-year-old would then post that video onto her Snapchat story, for all of her close friends to see. I can't show the footage for obvious reasons, but it's truly awful. And just based on the audio alone, you can tell that they're very obviously having fun doing this.
You gotta do it now. Now or never. Here, hold me. I got it. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Wow. What the entire fuck?
There's something so uniquely disturbing about it. It's clear that upon finding the body, there was no real emotional impact on them, at least none that outweighed their desire to steal from it. And as if stealing from this man who had just taken his own life, and posting it for all their friends to see as if it were a joke, wasn't horrible enough, they then immediately...
They don't understand, you never steal from a dead person.
Life, and posting it for all their friends to see as if it were a joke, wasn't horrible enough. They then immediately posted this other video to TikTok in an attempt to garner sympathy. It's truly awful, and made even more appalling by reports that claim that the 16-year-old had actually worn this medallion in the TikTok video and in others made following its posting. And unfortunately, their actions had even more upsetting consequences, as the footage from their Snapchat story was quickly downloaded by someone they knew and posted onto an app called Nextdoor, with the footage being totally uncensored. And it was on this app where it's claimed that many of Marcus Adams' own family members would see the footage, many of whom weren't even aware that he was deceased. Just one day after posting this TikTok, both girls were questioned by the police after the incident and the footage was reported to them, and as a result, Bethany would be charged with theft of a human corpse, but would ultimately avoid any serious jail time. Meanwhile, the 16-year-old's name and charges were never publicly released, but we do know that the medallion was returned to the family. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Bethany would later come back to her TikTok page shortly after her arrest and share her side of the story, where she gave a less than half-hearted apology, while also claiming to be the victim, saying that her friend had pressured her to steal from Marcus, as well as pressured her into making that TikTok in the first place, because she thought it would be a hit. Though obviously this didn't go over well.
That's crazy. Clout is a hell of a drug.
Man.
Clout and attention. Because that's exactly what that whole scenario was on both ends. Y'all wanted clout and attention from someone's unfortunate demise. Clout is a hell of a drug, bro. Like, that's insane, man.
On December 20th, 1984, 12-year-old Jonelle Matthews disappeared from her home in Greeley, Colorado in the evening hours. Earlier that day, she had sung at a Christmas concert with her school's choir, which her parents were unable to attend, as her mother was out of town and her father had gone to her sister's basketball game nearby, leading to Jonelle catching a ride home with a friend, being dropped off at her house sometime around 8:15, where she excitedly spoke to her father on the phone, letting him know that she had arrived home safe and sound. Approximately 1 hour later, her father, Jim Matthews, pulled into the driveway.
How old was she? I know he said, but I can't remember.
Sound. Approximately 1 hour later, her father, Jim Matthews, pulled into the driveway to find the garage door wide open, and the house completely empty. Jonelle was gone, leaving behind her winter coat and even her shoes, despite it being a frigid, snowy night. And it was within that snow that was quickly piling up that lie one of the only real clues left behind at the scene. Footprints, leading directly to one of the home's windows, insinuating that someone had been watching Jonelle.
12-year-old Jonelle Matthews disappeared from her Greeley home 1 month ago today. It's believed she's the victim of a kidnapping. She has not been seen or heard from since December 20th.
Her disappearance became a big news story almost immediately, with the whole community and really the whole country becoming invested in the fate of this girl, thanks in large part to her being one of the very first milk carton kids, meaning that her face and information about her disappearance was shown on countless milk cartons all across the country to get the word out. And as a result, this case became huge in the mainstream media, as even politicians began to make note of Jonelle's story, with then-President Ronald Reagan mentioning the girl in one of his speeches.
I learned about Jonelle Matthews of Greeley, Colorado, 5 days before Christmas. Jonelle disappeared from her home.
Though even with this publicity, this didn't necessarily guarantee results, and soon months would turn to years, and eventually to decades. And all the while, Jonelle's whereabouts remained a complete mystery. Eventually, the rise of the internet would start to play a key role in this case, where even in the late 2010s, over 3 decades after she had vanished, her case was still being shared and still being discussed, just as it had been 3 decades prior, with it still being a point of contention for politicians even as recently as 2019. When a man running for governor of Idaho mentioned her disappearance in a Facebook post, 35 full years later. Regardless of Jonelle's whereabouts, her case was still very much alive, as the world, and especially Jonelle's parents, were haunted by the question, what happened to Jonelle Matthews? But sure enough, in late 2019, they would finally get their answer.
Was found in Weld County earlier this week appeared to bring an end to a 3-decade-long search for a missing 12-year-old girl. The Greeley Tribune is reporting they are those of Jonelle Matthews.
On Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019, at roughly 4:50 p.m., a crew had been digging in an isolated field in Weld County, Colorado, in order to install a new pipeline, when they would uncover the decayed remains of a little girl. It was Jonelle, still wearing those clothes that she had worn to her recital, meaning she had likely died the very day she disappeared, having been killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. Jonelle Matthews had been murdered in cold blood, and almost immediately upon finding her body, the police would also zero in on their suspect. The man's name was Stephen Pankey, and at the time of Jonelle's disappearance, he had been living in the same general area in Colorado. But by
ain't this his motherfucker who was running?
That was his name. I read his name, but I just want to make sure the last name is the same. Right there.
Where are we at? 2904?
even as recently as 2019, when a man running for governor of Idaho mentioned her disappearance.
Steve Pankey.
That's the same man. I know you lied.
There's no such thing as closure. My 20-year-old son, Carl, was murdered on July 4th, 2008. Losing a child hurts your entire life. You sure do know, huh? I am fortunate to have truthful facts regarding Carl's murder. The United States Attorney for the District of Colorado needs to actively oversee the investigation into the death and disappearance of Miss Jonelle Matthews. That's weird to wrap this, how he wrapped it in.
My God.
A human being. Since 1984, police have only considered sinister and mostly charged child abduction possibilities, and they are culpable with resulting vigilantism. The public deserves the uncensored truth, even if it hurts the reputation of local law enforcement.
Pray for the truth, not revenge. The fact that you use this, something that you did.
Hold on.
Okay, let me just make sure before I start putting stuff on people. Go ahead.
But that's who they looking into.
Yeah. Maybe they
At the time of Jonelle's disappearance, he had been living in the same general area in Colorado. But by 2019, Stephen had long since fled the area, as after the crime, he would eventually pack up seemingly out of the blue and move to Idaho, where when Jonelle's body was discovered, he just so happened to be running for governor.
Yeah.
But what links him to her, though? Oh.
And during his campaign, Pankey had put out a bizarre Facebook post about Jonelle.
But the Facebook post is very bizarre, right? Because you went from talking about your son being a 20-year-old who was murdered on July 4th, 2008. We talking about the disappearance of a child.
Because like I said, I feel like we gonna get more information, but you using it for this like oh my gosh, she's so compassionate, or he hasn't forgot, or oh this, or oh, like.
But that just does the connection doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make
all.
sense at all, because it's still something
that you hold in the back of your head because you felt the guilt and the pressure of it for so many years. You walking with this burden. But I don't let's.
We're gonna see.
Calling for the Colorado DA to oversee a fresh investigation, as he stated that the local police had wrongly been focused on the theory that Jonelle's disappearance was a child abduction and murder, which was quite convenient, as just a few months after posting this, he would be arrested for the abduction and murder of Jonelle Matthews.
Yeah.
Police believe that Jonelle had first caught Stephen's eye when he was working as a janitor at the church she attended, with this leading to him stalking her and eventually abducting her on that fateful night, where he threw Jonelle in his car and ultimately ended her life, for no reason other than his sick satisfaction. He then proceeded to bury her in a field 20 miles away, in a spot that he was certain no one would ever find her. Now, the evidence supporting this is mainly circumstantial, but it is incredibly concerning. Just one day after Jonelle's abduction, Pankey decided to take his wife to California in order to celebrate the holidays with his parents, with this trip being completely unplanned, as his wife was only told of it literally the day of. And making things stranger, when they returned home, Stephen's car conveniently caught fire and was burned to a crisp, to which he offered no explanation for. But in response, he would take the car to a local scrapyard where it would be even further destroyed, taking any potential evidence along with it. But while this is all strange enough,
So the trip to California, because they can't directly, because he lived in the neighborhood.
Right.
So also, if they seen anything, they can't directly connect it to you, or investigate you right away, because now we're in California. Also, we don't know how long they stayed in California, right? Then you come back, the key evidence, which probably fibers, hair, or anything, you have to make sure you destroyed that. Yeah. So what's the best way to destroy it? Burn it.
Police say the main indicator that Stephen was their man was his clear obsession with Jonelle's case. Shortly after the slaying, Stephen began listening and watching any news reports he could on Jonelle's case, while also having his wife read every single article about the missing girl out loud.
So his wife didn't find that weird? Oh my gosh.
Which he would often have her repeat them over and over again. But his obsession didn't stop there, as he would then start frequently calling the police, wanting to talk to them about the case, even going as far as to give them potential leads, as he claimed to be fearful that he was going to be blamed for the crime, despite having seemingly never even met her.
What?
And it was during some of these many unusual phone calls that he was said to have given details on her disappearance that were never actually made public.
And
his obsession was entirely uncanny, bringing up her disappearance at random even decades later, with his Facebook post being a perfect example.
Cause that was, again, so freaking random. I'm pausing too much.
And as it turns out, one of Stephen's most incriminating statements came as a result of something he mentioned in that infamous message. In it, Stephen says that his son Carl had been murdered in 2008, which is in fact true, as the murder was actually fully solved, with it being confirmed that Stephen had nothing to do with it. But when he was mourning the loss of Carl, something unusual happened. His now ex-wife recalled that following Carl's death, Pankey never once cried, until the day before his memorial service, where she watched him from a distance walk up to their son's urn and begin to sob, eventually blurting out, "I hope God didn't allow this to happen because of Jonelle Matthews." Despite maintaining his innocence to this day, Pankey was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 2040, his conviction coming 12,634 days after Jonelle Matthews' disappearance.
Why you look like that for?
I
know what he mean by that.
Yeah, I know what he mean, but just the fact that no one found it weird and him suspicious, he's calling, he's giving y'all info that no one, that was not put out to the public, and it took y'all decades to connect. Bro, her case could have been solved. Should have been solved.
Yeah. And then honestly, he could have been screaming out "Catch me" this whole time. That's why he constantly calling y'all, trying to tell. It's like he's trying to tell y'all it's me without y'all
saying it's me.
Yeah, he's wanting to be caught because he's tired of living with it. because it's constantly consuming his life. I wonder, did he do anything with her before, or did he literally just kidnap her to kill her? Because typically when people do that, they kidnap the kids. They don't just kidnap the kids. And it remind me of the case of the dude, the one dude. He was in the military, the little boy. In the middle of the night, they was on their bikes, headed home. It remind me that body cam we did.
With Pankey's cryptic Facebook post serving as a dark relic of his twisted obsession that would eventually expose him as Jonelle's killer. I want to give a massive shout.
Bro, that's so weird, bro.
This happened in '84. It took them to 2019 to solve the Stern murder.
Too long.
When everything.
Too long.
He's basically calling y'all, hey, I did it, but y'all don't know I did it. But hey,
we giving y'all clues.
Giving y'all clues. Like, how would you know? You was out of town, supposedly. How would you know? This is stuff. This wasn't anything put out. I'm going to start looking into him. That makes no sense, but I'm glad. In the end, they were able to catch him and lock him up.
And convict him, yeah.
Huh?
I said convict him.
Yeah.
For sure, man. Hey, man, that's crazy, man. Y'all spam us up in the comments. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts in the comment section down below. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Kid and C.
We are.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me.